Welcome to my tutorial of Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse for the NES. And I found this to be the hardest of the 2D Castlevania games that are linear. Not counting the games that have backtracking. There was Vampire Killer for the MSX. I never beat that one because that one really involves, completely having it memorized and backtracking, getting keys, and opening gates. It's a very different kind of game. But I did complete Simon's Quest, the second game, the original game, Castlevania for the NES. And I've pretty much completed all the other 2D linear Castlevania games, aside from Vampire Killer. Like I said, it's not really linear, but it is a 2D game in the series. And I didn't complete Haunted Castle, which is an arcade version of Castlevania. So, there's that, and I think one of the Game Boy ones. But as far as, aside from that, I've pretty much completed all the Castlevania games in the linear style. I've also completed Symphony of the Night and the Lords of the Shadows games, but those are a little different. And I found this one to be the hardest of all those. So it took me around 8 hours and 38 minutes to beat. And I didn't lose my first continue until maybe the third or fourth actual world. So each world has a few sections. As you can see, it says 1-02, and then eventually, once you go through a certain amount of sections, it'll say 2-, and that's your next world, as I call it. So the way I left this run is I'm pretty much showing. I didn't edit out deaths in this run as far as the actual deaths within a successful continue. Of course, I did edit out all the unsuccessful continues and all the lives I lost in those attempts, because that would be over 8 hours of video, so it would be a lot. I had this game in the backlog for quite a while, so I had to rewatch my footage a little bit just to get a feel for some of the strategies that I used at the time. But it was good to finally complete this one and complete the trilogy on the NES, which I have tutorials up for on the channel for the first game. And now this is the third one. So I didn't do a tutorial for the second one because I was going step by step with a guide, actually, a video guide. So I was playing very slowly, just going step by step. Actually, the second game is probably the easiest in the series, but only with a guide because it's extremely cryptic. You really have to know where to go and do all these weird warps and all kinds of strange shit to beat it. But it's actually really easy in execution as far as executing the inputs and everything, as long as you know what you're doing. I had no fucking clue. That's why I watched the video and did it step by step. You Can Beat Video Games. Great fucking channel. That's what I used for Simon's Quest, Rygar, Metal Gear for the NES. All very cryptic games. So you're not too difficult, really. Very easy to execute, but difficult games if you don't know what's going on. So I recommend those guides. And I got a lot of my strategies from that video, but I also modified a lot of them, and some of them I just improvised. So it's not one for one as far as copying the strategies exactly, but I did get a lot of my strats from that video guide, so very useful. But I figured I would provide my own take on it because I did do some things a little differently. I found some safer strats that are easier to execute as far as skill-wise, where you can kind of bullshit your way through a little bit. So, it is a hard game, so it doesn't hurt to have a few additional strategies in your arsenal to try out. So I figured I would it'd be a good one to cover on the channel. I'm also going to do a review on the game. So yeah, what you're going to be seeing here is if I die on the boss in my successful attempt, as far as the continue. Because if you lose all your lives, you go back out to the continue screen. If you continue, you just start the stage over from the beginning. But you do have infinite continues. And I think this game may have passwords, though I didn't use them. I was playing on an emulator, so I would just reload the game and start the stage over. As if I had never shut the NES off, basically. Using save states. But I only use save states for practice and resuming games. I don't use it to cheat my way through or anything. But I do recommend using save states in a game like this for isolated practice, which I always recommend for these kind of games. You don't get efficient practice on the old NES games for the most part. If you want to practice efficiently, you really need to use save states on an emulator and just reload the same part as many times as it takes to where you can maybe beat a part. A good rule is 3 times in a row without losing. That's always a good rule for a hard part if you're practicing section by section in these games. Now, of course, as I've gotten better at practicing through games, I know when I'm comfortable, and sometimes I'll just beat a part one time, and I'm good with that. But for a long time, I made it a rule that I would beat a part 3 times in a row, usually, before moving on. with my practice runs and practicing the rest of the game. First boss is very easy in the same style of like all the Castlevania games. Pretty much the first boss is usually a complete joke, just like in the Ninja Gaiden games for NES. Super fucking easy. All you got to do is make sure you're hitting him, and then just try to move away from him if you need to. But you can pretty much take most of his health out as he's approaching you by whipping and retreating, and just keep whip and retreat, rinse and repeat. Very fucking easy. Now, I recommend taking the bottom path here. You want to follow the exact path I take because there's a reason why I went with the Syfa path, which gets the character Syfa. And by getting her, she pulls major bullshit, and she can trivialize a lot of parts with some of her magics. So it's very, very specific why I'm taking this route. In this game, you can take various routes, which is very cool. And depending on your route, you can get 2 other different characters that you can switch between. And they have very different abilities. Like one of them can climb on walls, I think Grant. But I'm not too familiar with them because I didn't take those paths. I only beat the game with the Syfa path. So I can't give much advice on that. But I did a lot of research, and it did seem like Syfa was the easiest way to go, and I was going for the kill. So a lot of times you're going to see in my videos, I do things specifically because I just want the fucking kill. So I may look up information. And, over the years I had seen information, and Syfa was looking like a good way to go. If it wasn't available, of course, I would have just beat the game with whatever was required. But if I can find an easier path, I'm going to take it. So Syfa's a pretty good path. She does take a lot of damage later in the game when she gets hit, but that may be true for the other characters as well. But she has ways to take out enemies from far away, like homing abilities and things like that are really good. For these owls, you want to kind of inch the screen. You're going to see their eyes. You want to kind of inch the screen, and if you did get the cross, you want to throw it out as you're moving. And of course, when they come out, they're gonna go into the cross if you do it right. I didn't execute it too great here, but that was a general idea that I was going for. But yeah, Syfa definitely a good choice if you're just looking to beat the game. And I think the strats that I ended up using will be very helpful. But yeah, it's a challenging game, definitely. A lot harder than the first game. The first game, for me, really just had the one roadblock for me, that I didn't beat it for a while because of the Grim Reaper. But I did eventually practice the Grim Reaper to the point I was able to beat him with no damage with like just a basic sub-weapon. But that was a one-time thing I did during save state practice. I did post it up in my boss domination series, which shows bosses getting dominated pretty much, which is always interesting to kind of make a playlist of that kind of shit. I like that, but it's fun to try to get those every once in a while. But that was just because I had practiced the shit out of it. I think I was trying to get a no damage run, also just to post it up on that playlist. I thought it would be cool. But aside from that Grim Reaper, though, the rest of the game really, really not that bad if you're used to difficult old games. Anyway, it can be very hard if you're not used to them. So it's all relative, but this game is quite a bit more difficult than that first game. It's consistently more difficult. The stages tend to be more difficult on the whole. Now, the first 3 or 4 stages that you're seeing here, this is still a third world or whatever, so this is not where the game really spikes in difficulty yet. So this is still pretty damn easy, relative to how the game gets later. No boss at the end of this path. So now we're going to have another path to take. And we're going to want to take the upper path this time. So the upper path is going to get us Syfa, and we're going to get her pretty early in the game, which is really good. I believe the maximum amount of characters you can have is just one other helper. So you got to kind of pick wisely which ones you want by taking, which path you take will determine that. So I think Syfa is going to be the wise choice for a first-time player. It worked well for me. I didn't try the other paths, but it did definitely work well. And once you get another character, you press select to switch between them on the fly. It is kind of a long animation, which is kind of annoying, but at least you can switch between them in real time. So a lot of this playing, early on is a lot sloppier because I beat these stages pretty quick and I didn't really get in any practice. I was just improvising a lot of this. So you're not going to see the gameplay tighten up until way, way later in the later stages. that really required me, not to fuck up too much. That's when the game got a lot harder. Really, I think maybe stage 6 was the first stage to give me quite a bit of trouble. But yeah, you will see me die on some of these bosses too, which is kind of good to show. I didn't want to edit it out because I thought with a game like this, it might be good to show, getting back to the boss and doing it. Because you still got to get back to the boss with decent health. So I thought that would, if I edited that out and just, instantly respawned myself at the boss like nothing happened, it might not be, as good because you wouldn't see how I got back there. Because you can see I didn't play a lot of these parts perfectly, and even with half health, some of the bosses still weren't too bad. So I kind of wanted to show that. So you can get a turkey there, which is good. This boss is actually quite easy. All you really have to do, if you got the dagger, it may be kind of useful, but all you got to do is go all the way to the upper right corner. And I think just whip him or throw shit at him. Maybe whip him. I think that's what you do for this boss. I'm going to see in a minute. This is going to be a death. But we'll see what I ended up doing on the on the next attempt. See, now this is where you start back. If you die at that boss, you will start back here. You're going to see a few of the hardest stages in the game. I'm going to do them without any deaths, and that's unedited, including the final stage. I did them without any deaths, and my successful attempt, obviously. I died many times learning them, but I also did a lot of save state practice for each section to really master them. Or by master, I mean, learn them well enough to where I could beat a few of the later stages with no deaths. So you will see that. And here you're going to see some sloppy gameplay, like I said, in the earlier stages, because I didn't have to perfect them as much to succeed. But the later stages where shit gets more serious, you'll see the gameplay gets a little bit more serious as well. So here, just kind of run past him while he's not spawned on the stage. You can run past him. And then just get up on this block here. And I think I just sit here and just whip on this block. And there's no way that he can damage you more than you can damage him, I don't think. So, I mean, that should get through very easily. And you have a turkey there, too, to get your full health back. So you shouldn't lose too many health getting to him. And you should be able to replenish it with the turkey. So you really don't need to play well to beat that guy. You will be fighting multiple of them later, though. They do show up throughout the game. But they get even easier later because there's other bullshit you can pull with Syfa. Yeah, so now you're going to get Syfa. Shit, I thought this was a female all this time, but, fuck them. So once you get this character, it is going to open up some bullshit that you can pull if you have the right weapons. Now, I don't know if I was really utilizing her too well early on because, I maybe didn't really need to. So, take these strats with a grain of salt. You may want to experiment with her. A lot of times I didn't use her earlier on because she does take more damage, and I wasn't really familiar with where her special weapons were and all that. But if you're having trouble with a stage, you may want to take the time to learn where her special weapons are at so that you can utilize them and get through the stages. It may even be easier to get through the stages if you're having trouble. Not to mention she's great at most of the bosses too, so just because I don't use her earlier on in the game doesn't mean don't not to do it. You know what I mean? It's just this is just how I beat the game, and I'm just adding commentary. It's not refined at all. I didn't go back and rebeat anything. There was no refining done here. When I beat the stages with no death, that's just how I did them after practicing them with save states. So that was just my successful attempts. But I never went back to redo anything. So there's definitely going to be better ways to do a lot of this shit. The stopwatch is often very good if you have, either character. But you can get the stopwatch with either character. But aside from that, the two different characters, they all have their own special weapons that they pick up. I think that's true for all the characters in the game. So this whip character, I think this is Grant. He will always get certain power-ups in the same spot each time. And the power-up that he gets, if you're playing as, say, Syfa, and you get that same power-up, it's going to be something different that relates to her. So just remember that. Also, you can collect power-ups for your secondary character and then switch back to Grant. So if you want to hold a power-up, it's a great way to do so. Just make sure that when you break the candle, you're playing as the character with whom's power-up you want to get. So because if you break the candle, you can't just switch characters and the power-up will switch. once the power-up is out in the open like that, it's just going to be whatever it is. So if you know that there's a power-up in a candle, try switching to Syfa and break the candle with her, or the lantern, and then you'll get whatever power-up it is for her. It's going to be something specific each time, but it's always going to be the same, depending on who you're playing as. So these are things that are predictable and that you can use to your advantage when you're mapping out your strats. And of course, I didn't do a lot of that early on. I just kind of learned how to play it, and I just didn't really worry too much. I just pretty much, whatever I got was what I got. I didn't really know what I was going to pick up. I didn't really memorize where the power-ups were for the most part. So I was like, I just grabbed shit, and it's like, all right, that's cool. I'll use this fucking knife. But I wasn't planning for it. But later on, I actually had strategies based around, grabbing it, specific weapons that I would use to really destroy the bosses, which is very good. And also, sometimes it's good to get the power-ups for specific parts. It can make parts of the stages much easier, too, sometimes. So I've done that as well. But don't worry too much about getting every little lantern. I mainly just get the ones that are kind of in my way as I'm moving forward. I don't usually do too much backtracking to get them, unless I'm trying to get some specific weapon for like a boss or something. Now, this is a mid-boss in the stage. Super easy. I'm sure there's a better strat, but all I did was duck and whip her and just try to outdamage her before she outdamaged me, and she's very slow. So just stay back. I think in this game, if you walk into the boss's bodies, you take more damage than if you get hit by their projectiles for the most part. I think this game may have that little rule. So generally, I try not to hit into the boss's body in these kind of games. I'm not sure if this is one of those games that does that, because I didn't really check that carefully. But I just assumed, so I would play accordingly. But it's not a bad thing to know these kind of things, The more that you know, the more you can formulate a strat. Because sometimes you may want to just take damage and out damage a boss. So it's good to know certain things about the damage values and all that kind of shit, if you want to get a little deeper with it. So, get off of those braking platforms. You don't want to stand on those for too long. So a lot of times what you'll see save state appearing in the bottom left. And that's not because I was going to reload them and cheat or anything. It's just because I figured, well, if I fuck this up, I may need to go back and practice this again. Or maybe I didn't practice it yet at all. Maybe I'm just improvising, so it's like something that I can utilize later. You know what I mean? So now you're seeing the whipping of the candles to get all the hearts and shit. I don't think there's much left to this stage. I think this is pretty far into the stage. There's not too much going on with these enemies. Pretty simple so far. So this boss, I believe it's pretty simple. Yeah, for this boss, all you got to really do is just duck here and keep whipping. And, once the first mummy is destroyed, just move a little bit farther out past the platform and, continue. I don't know if you even need to really duck and whip, but either way, very easy. And then you're just going to go on this platform all the way to the upper right. And I think all you got to do here is, actually, for this, there's a little pattern. Whenever you see him shuffle his legs, that's when you move to one of the platforms. So you can whip him once or twice, but don't get greedy. You might want to get one or two whips in, maybe just one if you're having trouble. And, hit him once, twice, and then just retreat to the other platform. When he shuffles his legs, he's going to charge real fast, so that's when you want to jump over his head and go in the opposite direction, that's all. You see I did pretty sloppy here. I think this was my first time trying to actually do it. So now you'll see the proper way to do it. You'll see a little bit better execution. So yeah, from up here, you get a free shot or two, but you basically just want to, repeat that easy pattern where you really shouldn't even get hit if you're playing it safe. As long as you're paying attention, you'll see when he shuffles his legs, he's going to charge across. He gives you a little time. You don't want to be too close, though, then that happens. You see you take a lot of damage from that. I think I took a massive amount of damage from that. I guess because, like I said, I think if you hit into the boss's body, generally you take a huge amount of damage in this game. That's kind of like the thing to avoid. Now, that time it didn't seem like I took that much damage, so I don't know. Maybe they're a little bit nicer to you when you're at the end of your health bar. Or maybe I took a few hits, wasn't really paying attention. But it's a pretty basic strat. It's really not hard. So this stage, I don't really remember exactly. I have to see it again. I think this stage might start to get pretty challenging. The last stage I don't remember being that hard. I remember it being pretty straightforward. Maybe not easy or anything, but, kind of moderate for the game anyway. This stage might be where it starts to spike up a little bit. The main area I remember having trouble on at first was the sixth world after this. I remember that being tough for me. I had to practice that quite a bit. But it is hazy. I had this in my backlog for, it may have even been a few years because I just didn't go back to it. So, some of this footage is old. And when I went through an editing, I think in the last stage I saw something that said loaded state. What could have happened with that is, when I'm editing the full video, there's practice runs within the full video, and I have to try to isolate and find the actual successful run, not just the part where I was practicing the sections. So it's possible that in editing I may have accidentally left in the part that said loaded state. I probably had to go a little farther into the edit and isolate a different section. But as long as it at least shows everything, so it shouldn't be too big of a problem. Hopefully there's no more editing errors like that, if that's what that was. I mean, it must have been because I went through the whole game, starting the stages over and just doing them all, legit. Stairs are very dangerous in these games. It's kind of shitty. One thing I don't like about the game is that there's a lot of stairs bullshit. And you're pretty much immobilized on the stairs. I mean, you can walk very slowly up and down and whip. And you can use special moves on the stairs, but it's like very fucking... It's weird when you try to use them. Like, it works for me sometimes, but the control gets all fucked. The game also has some slowdown issues where inputs get eaten up, and, your inputs just don't show up on screen, so that's shitty. So there's definitely some technical issues, other things that I don't like about the game, but I'll cover that more in the review. Another problem with stairs is that if you get hit and knocked back, you go right through the stairs. You can only walk on them by hitting the diagonal and like getting on the stair. Now, if you get hit while you're walking up a stair, you don't get knocked off the stair then. You're like glued to the stairs until you get to the top. But you can take a lot of damage that way because you can't move barely. You can't jump on the stairs. So you're very limited. This game is also old style where once you jump in a direction, you're locked into that trajectory. You can't shorten your jump or anything like that. You got to have your distancing perfect. So you got to commit to those jumps. Between that and a knockback, it can make these games tough. And this game does up the difficulty over the first one with much harder platforming and other bullshit to deal with. The stages are pretty long, too, so you kind of have to have better endurance with not taking damage too often. You don't get a ton of wall meat in this game. Of course, whipping walls gives you turkeys inside the fucking wall, like the series is known for. But you only, there's not a lot of spots in this game that have those. But they are kind of hidden spots, so it is worth whipping the walls. I'm sure I may have even missed some of them. So, always look out for that. This part's not too hard, but you do have to kind of keep up with the screen. Mostly you're going to probably be waiting for the screen to scroll. The most irritating thing is guys that hang out right on the staircase like this, because you can't really, there's nothing you can do to get rid of them if you don't have a special weapon that arcs over your head, like the axe maybe could take care of them. Or if you had the stopwatch, you could freeze them. But I don't know if those weapons are available in this stage. I didn't have them, so, if I didn't have a choice, I had to tank the hit because you can't wait around forever while the screen is scrolling up. I think the screen stops here, though. So once you get up here, then you're okay. But it may take some practice. I don't think this was a stage that gave me too much trouble, because it didn't stick out in my memory, but maybe I beat it a long time ago. Might have been one of the older stages, because I think I got to World 6 and then I took a long-ass break. I think that was my latest break that I took from the game. It didn't take me very long, I think, to get to Stage 6. I may have done that quite quickly, but then when I got to Stage 6, it was definitely a difficulty spike, and I wasn't really in the mood at the time. So I think I just didn't go back to it for a while. But it was one on my backlog, on my list of games that I wanted to, complete. And it's really not that hard or anything compared to a lot of shit that I played through, but I just get I just jump around a lot. So you can get those candles down if you want. What I hate about parts like this is that when you try to crouch and whip the guy, if you're not positioned perfectly, you get sucked into the fucking staircase. That's another thing about stairs in this game. If you're too close to the stair, you get sucked into it if you hit up or down, depending if there's a staircase below you or above you. In this area, there's one above and below, so it's kind of dangerous. So I think this part's pretty tricky. You got to try to get your positioning right. You can take these statues out if you want. I think I probably preferred to try to walk up there, but you see I died there. So this is where you're going to start back at. At least you start back with full health, but you got to redo several areas. And like I said, I find these areas very irritating with the staircases in your way. Because there's a good chance you're going to walk up or down the stairs and get fucked. So we'll see what I did this time. I didn't really go over this stage to see what I did. I did scan through to the bosses just to see what I did on some of the bosses for the tutorial, just so I could have better commentary because it's been so long. But I didn't really check these earlier stages. It looks like I just took some of the hits and just was like, fuck it, let me just get up these stairs. I guess as long as you can dodge most of this shit, then I guess you'll be alright. You can see, though, if you get the spacing right, you can kind of get between the two groups of fireballs in a few spots. The birds are always irritating, so you kind of want to wait for them to come to you and take them out, because if you try to chase after the birds and go up on the stairs and do shit like that, they may knock you in a hole or cause some other problem. So it's kind of good to just, let them come to you a lot of times. So this was a pause. I was probably checking a video or something. I don't know if I practiced this stage very much. I'm sure I did, but I don't know if I put a lot of practice into it. I may have been checking a video just to go over and see, so I didn't fuck up whatever was coming up next. Probably the boss. This may be the Frankenstein boss, if I remember right, which ended up being super easy. I think this might have been the strat that I checked. You just go all the way in the upper right over here, and as long as you have the axes, make sure you get the axes. You may want to pay attention to where I got them at, if you don't know where they're at. I don't even remember where I got them from, but I believe they're in this stage, so you should be able to pick them up. And if you get the axes, you can just do this, and you won't take any damage. And you might get hit by, I guess some of those can reach kind of high, so you may have to jump. But, I mean, it's pretty safe up here. It's pretty easy to dodge shit. if you take a few hits, it shouldn't be too bad. It's not really a safe spot, but it's a safer spot than being down where all that bullshit is. It seems like it would be kind of hard to fight him down on the ground with all the bullshit coming down, but I didn't really try it. So this was the first real difficulty spike for me. And this took a decent amount of practice. I believe it took me a decent amount of time, probably over an hour, if I had to remember, but it was one of the harder stages, definitely the hardest stage up until this point. This is where I remember having difficulty. So for the hunchback guys, it's better to whip above them while standing, and they will jump into your whip, just like in the other games. Now, a good thing here is if you have Syfa, which you should have, if you can get her freeze magic, it may be around here. I'm not sure. But if you do have freeze magic with her, you can freeze the water, which can make you get freeze right here. So what you want to do here is just kind of freeze and keep moving. So use it as needed, and try to keep moving. But you can freeze the water, and you want to freeze the bullets of the statue and then whip the statue, and it makes it quite an easy section. You see, I didn't end up getting hit there, I don't think. Let me see what my health, unless it doesn't show. Yeah, no, that was clean. So that's what you want to do. Freeze really trivializes a lot of parts of the game. You can pull a lot of bullshit. It doesn't have a huge range, but it shoots out in all directions above, and it doesn't go below you, but it has a large range. So just freeze the enemies and just keep moving. You can also destroy the fireballs with your wand if you time it right, which you're going to want to do at certain points. It just makes it easier to move up to the enemies within freeze range. So sometimes you want to destroy projectiles. Now you see the stairs fucked me there. What I was trying to do was use my freeze magic on the knight, but of course she just went up the fucking stairs, because that's what the shit control that this game kind of has at parts. So whenever you try to do your magic, don't do it near the stairs, or you'll take damage. So these statues, I believe they always shoot out 3 fireballs in this area. So that's when there's a gap between the 3 fireballs. That's your chance to get in and freeze the statue and take it out. And I do recommend using her and using her freeze magic for these sections. It makes it a lot easier. So here I switch back to Grant. I believe Syfa also takes a little bit more damage than Grant. So it's not always good to use her if you think you're going to get hit. But Grant's good for this because this is a stage where you want that long range of the whip so you can keep moving, because that area does crumble, so you want to be able to keep moving and whipping the bats or whatever the hell they are. You just keep moving forward, and that's the idea with that. You just got to keep moving. Obviously, practice all these sections with save states until you have them down. So this boss can be tough. Now, I don't know if I beat it on this first life on this attempt, but it's tough until you understand it. But you mainly want to stay on that rightmost block or the leftmost block, depending. But you don't want to be like right on the edge, on the opposite edge of the dragon, because it will knock you into the water. You see, I'm staying all the way on the end of the block most of the time, on that right block. But you do have to be ready to duck and kind of move as well. So you got to get used to this. And it just takes practice. I had to practice this quite a few times to get the positioning right. Not the easiest thing to explain, but the right block was a good place most of the time, but you do have to move around and duck shit. But I do stay on this one platform, and I do recommend having the axes if you can, but the axe is not a requirement, but it does help you get that extra damage. Otherwise, you're just going to have to wait around more to get those hits in, and you're going to have to dodge for a little bit longer. But you see, when I beat it, it was just very close. But I remember I did have to practice it quite a few times. So definitely practice that with save states to get it down. But you want to stay on that middle platform to simplify things. And, you want to stay on the right platform often, because you don't want to get... If you're positioned a certain way, you're going to get knocked into the water. That's the hardest thing about the dragons. It's really not too bad once you've practiced it for a little while. But But you want to use save states because these old games don't give you really any room to practice unless you want to beat the whole stage again or keep repeating checkpoints. So I always recommend using save states to practice shit like that. So here I pick up the freeze magic. I switched to Syfa so I can get that freeze magic, I believe. Now for these platforms, you want to dodge the sparks, obviously, but be ready to jump onto the platform when it's pretty much level with the top of the pillar. That's kind of like the mark that I use. And then once you do that, freeze that enemy quickly and his bullets and take out the statue. And the hunchback, just keep smacking and you'll get him when he jumps up, most likely. So 3 fireballs and then you have a chance to move. Then there's that gap. But it doesn't last for very long, so you got to kind of keep up with it and keep moving forward, deflect the fireballs as needed, and then once you're within range, use the freeze. So I like to try to freeze the hunchbacks before I go up here because this is a dangerous area. And I still end up taking damage, but it kind of helps to freeze them first. I don't really worry about trying to kill them unless they're directly in my way. My main goal with this whole section is just to get the fuck to the end of it. Try to get to the end of it. Try not to get hit too much, but it can be tricky. So again, it's 3 fireballs and then a gap. So if you have to deflect them, but once you get close enough, use that freeze. I think for this stage, it was kind of essential not to die because I wanted to keep that freeze magic for the whole stage. So this is when certain strategies become very specific, where you want to keep it, you want to get a special weapon and keep it. Luckily, it's very easy to get the freeze with Syfa. It's right in the beginning of the stage, so you can't miss it. The hard part is trying to stay alive for the whole stage with the freeze magic can be tricky. But that's what I recommend doing because if you lose it, the rest of the stage becomes much harder. She's pretty good at dealing with this stage as long as you keep your freeze magic. So try to play this carefully and freeze these guys when you have the opportunity. There's a turkey here so you get some food back. So there is the trickiest jump in the game is coming up. And it's really not that hard, but I could see how players could fail it a lot. I was able to get it, I think, the first time, but I did fuck it up before on my other attempts. You want to kind of jump up these things and move fast and get to the end and jump to the next platform. That's the trickiest jump, that large gap. You have to be at the very edge with your feet hanging off the platform before you make your jump. Otherwise, you'll fall in the hole. So it's a very wide jump. So you got to be used to being right at, with your feet hanging off the edge. One of your legs will be hanging off the edge pretty much. So practice that with save states. Make sure you don't fuck it up, because then you can keep fucking that up and you won't beat the rest of the stage. So ice works very well here still. So you can pretty much freeze everything. It makes it a lot easier. So no deaths on the stage as of yet. I don't remember if this was one of the stages I did a no death run on when I beat it. So here you want to get that book. That's going to give you your homing magic, which we haven't really used yet with Syfa, but you're going to see what it does. It's pretty much the best magic in the game as far as I can tell, but maybe certain magics are better for certain circumstances, but overall it's probably the best overall magic because it actually follows the enemies and kills them. So it's very powerful. And it's gonna melt this boss. There's 3 forms to this boss right here. And this move pretty much destroys it. I think I ended up beating this boss and this whole stage without any deaths because I had to practice it for a while. This is one of the hardest stages. So for the first part, you're going to stay up here and just keep casting your homing magic, and they won't even be able to reach you up here. So you keep using that homing magic, you will totally destroy them. And I believe the second form is going to be the same thing. I don't think that spirit that comes out can hurt you, but I didn't want to take a chance. So if you don't have this magic or whatever, you can fight this guy in a similar way that you did before when he shuffles. You go to the other side. Same boss. But if you want to just make it easier, just make sure you get here, Syfa, and you grab that homing magic. And just stay up here and keep firing it. So now this is the only boss that changes it up slightly. This is the last boss of this stage. Want to start off all the way on the left and just throw homing magic at him for a little while. And then you're going to switch sides when you have a chance. And just keep spamming the homing magic. Sometimes it does linger for a while, and it won't let you cast right away. Because it could be kind of dumb when it comes to homing in on the enemy. So keep casting it. Try not to get cornered like I did. I actually ended up taking a hit here, but it's avoidable if you just jump over his head a little sooner by getting up on one of the platforms. But if you do take a hit here, it's probably not going to completely end you. So then just move to the other side and finish him off. Very easy with that strat. But that can be a hard little triage of bosses to do on whatever health you had left when you got there. So as long as you know that trick, you really don't have to take any damage if you play it carefully. So now we're getting towards the end of the game, and there's, I believe there may be, let me see, maybe two more stages, maybe, if I remember right. There's 2 or 3 stages left. But this stage actually I found very easy. It didn't take me long. But I had watched the video beforehand. But once I watched the video, I beat this stage within a few attempts. I may have beaten this stage on the first attempt. That might be why I'm pausing it and shit. Because I think I may have been checking exactly what to do, and I was able to pull it off. I did. You'll see I played sloppily. I actually lost a few lives, but I did end up succeeding. So I think I may have gotten it on the first set of lives. If not, it was very close to that. It did not take long. So I was surprised with that. It's actually a pretty easy stage if you play it safely. I believe you can get the fire early on with Syfa, which is pretty useful for the stage. Unless I don't think I carried it over from the previous stage because I was using homing on the previous, so I think I got it here. Fire can be kind of useful. Not my favorite magic, but it's actually really good on the final boss. I think that was the only other time I use it. Maybe on the Grim Reaper too. I'll have to see what I used on the Grim Reaper. It might have been the homing magic. But this stage really isn't too hard. I mean, it's not super lengthy. The Grim Reaper on this stage has 2 forms, but it's way easier than the first game, Grim Reaper, which only had 1 form, but was much, much harder. So this is like an easy version of that Grim Reaper. But it really doesn't play the same, different patterns and everything, but it is an easier Grim Reaper. Of course, Simon's Quest has the easiest Grim Reaper. I think you can just walk right past him, and the game just lets you proceed and just ignore him, if I remember right. There's a turkey pretty early in the stage, right in that fucking wall, so you can get some health back there. Since these are skeletons, they die in 1 hit, so the red ones will always reanimate, so you got to be careful with that, but the green blob is kind of like the hunchback. It keeps leaping. Same type of strat. Just, strike above it, and it'll go into your hit usually. So the main trick for this stage, really the stage is not that difficult compared to what you've already completed at this point. So the main thing to pay attention to here is going to be bringing the proper weapon to the Grim Reaper. That's all. You want to make sure you have Syfa equipped. You want to be using Syfa when you whip a certain candle, because if you don't do that, then you won't get the move that you need to make the Grim Reaper super easy. I know that I beat the Grim Reaper on the first try. I just don't remember if I beat the stage on my first set of lives, but the Grim Reaper I beat on my first life getting to him. So I did check a video to double check, but very easy. So as long as you get the weapon that I show, you will probably beat him very easily. You want to try to match if the knight is standing or ducking. That's where his axe is going to travel. So either high or low. So pay attention to that. You can get the freeze magic here. I don't know how much I'm actually going to be using it. This stage I think is pretty close to being done. Yeah, I don't even think I use it. This is like the last area before the boss. So get the heart, but make sure you're playing a Syfa for this part. I think I think this might be where I paused. I edited out the pause, but I was checking to see what to do on the Grim Reaper. But yeah, make sure you're playing as Syfa so you can get this. See this book? That's what you want. That's going to give you the homing magic. Now, I switched to Grant briefly, maybe because I didn't know what was coming up, but I don't know that was necessary to do. Of course, whatever hearts you collect, it counts for Syfa too, so you share the same health and the same heart. I think, yeah, switch to Grant here because you may have to whip some shit that's going to attack you, and you got to move fast. So yeah, this is why I switched to Grant. I may have fucked this up. Yeah. But you do get a checkpoint in this room, so now you kind of know what to expect. So what I'm going to end up doing here, I think, is equipping Syfa. Put Syfa on just to whip that candle and get the book. And then once you got your homing magic, switch back to Grant. Because what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to be prepared to whip these enemies twice. The knights have to be whipped twice to be killed. So if you don't have a special weapon like a sub-weapon, obviously you strike and press up at the same time to use your sub-weapons. I don't think I mentioned that, but if you don't have a sub-weapon like I have with her, well, now I have Holy Water with Grant, I guess. So we'll see if I use that, but I don't think that helped too much. Oh, yeah, I did. I died twice here. That's right. Now I remember. Yeah, I barely beat this. I think this was my first try on this stage, my first set of lives, but I was down to the wire. So I almost used a continue, which, of course, you have unlimited, but I would have had to redo the stage. But I remember beating this very quick. But you can see that it was a lot sloppier. I had a lot less time with this stage I pretty much didn't know what was coming up, so just improvising most of it. I was checking a video, though, for the Grim Reaper mainly. So yeah, now you want to play as Grant. Hopefully I can take out the knights fast enough. I mean, now I'm going to do it. But get the power-ups for your whip. So you have the whip length and a little bit more power. So the idea is I just ignore the candles at this point. I'm just trying to survive. I was focusing too much on getting candles and shit, and I just stopped doing that. So just keep going. You're going to have to take out that one knight by whipping him twice. It's really easy if you don't try to get the candles, which was definitely fucking me up. So now the Grim Reaper with full health, very easy. First you're going to stay up on this upper platform and keep spamming your homing. You may take a few hits, but this was my first time playing it, and it was easy to pull off. I think it was a little close, though, but it's really not that hard. Just try to stay away and keep launching your homing. So now for this face, stay on the right side and keep launching it. You may get an occasional staff strike in as well, but the homing will do all the main damage. If you see it getting too close to you, then move out to the middle and just keep firing it. It's really very easy. Without the homing, or the right weapon, I'm sure it could be a little tricky. It doesn't seem like it would be as hard as the first Grim Reaper from the first game. But I mean, that's what I did on it, so I wouldn't even know. So I found this stage to be the hardest stage in the game by far. This one probably took me over 2 hours, which included a lot of save state practice on specific sections. So I was able to get through this stage with only dying once on my successful attempt, but I did it in a very specific way. So first you're going to start out with Grant, and you're going to want to do the same thing here where you're going to want to switch sides as needed, pivot left and right as needed. You can take out 2 hunchbacks with 1 whip if you do it right, as you saw. You want to whip just above them so they jump into it, but you're going to have to be ready to switch sides. And it's tricky, and it can take a little practice. It's definitely not an easy section, but it's one of the easier sections of this stage. You really don't want to get hit more than once. Whenever I get hit more than once on this section, I reset the stage because it's just going to set you up to lose more lives later. So this section is easy. There's nothing hard here. Now, I had a very specific strategy where I ignored most of the candles because I knew exactly what I needed to beat the boss. I believe I needed only 4 hearts and a specific weapon with Syfa to beat the boss. So I was not worried about getting candles because I knew exactly what I was going for. So I didn't waste time with that. This was very specific. So for this stage, you really have to learn when to duck, jump, and what to destroy. You see, this is tough. This is one of the hardest sections of the game, this little section right here. And very specific. I try to approach slowly and take out the flying gargoyles when I can, but I did take a lot of hits. And it's okay if you take a few hits there because it is one of the hardest sections. But there's one more very hard section in this stage, which there is a way that I learned to kind of bullshit my way through it. I also ignore like power weapons that could make things easier, like freeze, because I didn't want to bother to get it. Because it's kind of tricky to grab it as the screen is going upwards, as you're going to see here. The screen scrolls upwards really fast at one point, and it's hard to keep up with it and still grab the freeze weapon with Syfa. Though you can if you want. It is possible. You can also grab a 1-up in this area. It's in one of these areas, but I don't get it. So my goal was just to beat the game, so I just wanted to get through this stage. And I figured out how to do it without getting the power up anyway, so I just used my strat. So you want to kind of just go up as fast as you can and, avoid these sparks, obviously. And there's going to be skeletons that spawn in specific areas. Like up here, there's going to be a skeleton that spawns each time. It's always going to come in on that right side, so be ready to whip it twice to take it out. And shortly after, there's going to be another skeleton you're going to have to deal with that spawns on the left side of the platform. So make sure you're on the right side of that platform before the screen scrolls up so that he'll spawn right there on the left and you can whip him twice, take him out. Now you notice I ignored most of the candles and shit because I'm just trying to get through this. And I didn't really need them because I figured out how to do it. I practiced it with save states until I could do this upcoming section. As long as I had a full health bar. So I did lose a life there because I got there without full health. So I did end up losing a life there. That jump is a little tricky. Sometimes you'll land on one of them, but you can do it so that you don't get hit. So here you can get some wall meat at least and get most of your health back. Again, I ignored the candles up above because I knew what I needed. I only need really 4 hearts to beat the boss, which is what I'm focused on. So you're going to see me die here, but then you're going to see how I do this strat with no sub weapons, and as long as I have a full health bar, I can pull it off. So you're going to see me fuck it up here. The main thing I do is just jump across and whip the candles just to get a few hearts. But I keep moving to the left pretty much. And I do take a lot of hits. But you'll see, usually I can get up to the top of the stairs with 1 piece of health remaining, which I think is what I do here. So as long as I have a full health bar, this is what I do. I keep jumping to the left and striking the candles, and I just keep going. And you'll see I'll have 1 piece of health left probably by the time this is over. But this is what I do. I usually get here. Most of the time I'll have 1 piece of health left, but now I don't need any more health because I know how to do the rest of the stage. So fire a homing jump down here, whip this guy. Strike him, I mean. Make sure you take out those shadow guys with your staff. But then just start using your homing magic, and you should be able to clear out the enemies enough to get up here. Now this next part I have to do with no damage, and I'll show you how I do it. Just walk on these platforms. Do not jump on these platforms with the Medusas. If you do, it'll be a fuckfest, and you'll get knocked off. Like, see how easy it is to fall off now? I fucked up by jumping at the end, but I was able to save it. But I don't recommend jumping. You want to just weave left and right and dodge the Medusa heads that way and smack them if they get too close. Use your homing magic as well. You have a few options there to disperse them. So now once you get here with your homing weapon, as long as you have 4 hearts, you should have enough to... it only takes about 4 attacks to kill her with the homing magic. So that's really all you need to do. But it's very specific. You can see I had a very specific way of doing that section, but I think it'll help because it's not really... in the other tutorial I watched, it wasn't covered how to do that because it was using special weapons, and I didn't want to bother with the special weapons, so I was just kind of stubborn. So that's another way you can go about it. So yeah, now, I believe, this is the final stage. So you're going to see a no-death run of the final stage. You see I'm reloading a few times here. I'm doing that to reset the stage. Instead of suiciding all my lives, I'll use save states to reset the stage. As it would be if I committed suicide, pretty much. It's just faster. But yeah, with the bats, you're just going to face left and right and take out the bats as they come to you. There's a pattern to it. And if you watch closely, you'll see how I did it. It may be a little trickier with Syfa because of her shorter range, but it was easy enough for me to get down. Make sure you get that candle there because you're going to get a stopwatch if you're playing as Syfa. I don't know about with Grant, but you'll get a stopwatch with Syfa. So the stopwatch is good for these like next few sections. Now I didn't use it here because I was able to just counter the Medusa heads, with good positioning. But if you're having trouble, use the stopwatch. You can freeze the heads for a little while. So this is a tough part. This is one of the hardest parts of the stage. You want to go all the way down to the end of the stairs. Don't be close to the stairs. Then freeze time and get right on this block that the stone enemy is on, because that block won't break if you stand on it, but other blocks will. So again, you're going to do the same thing. Freeze time, take out the bat, get some of these hearts so you have enough, and then freeze time again and get right on this thing where this guy is. You want to get on the same block that stone thing is on so you can strike it till it's dead. That's why you want to get the stopwatch. That's the main reason to get it. This stage is actually pretty short, but that's one of the hardest parts of the stage. So, the stage really isn't that bad, but it's still tricky. So dodge all that shit and get the wall meat here. And, jump if you need to dodge the spiders. So you can use, if you have the holy water, you can use it to take out that red skeleton easy enough. You may take a hit here on the top when you're going up the stairs. It's hard to kind of control where the skeletons go when you're going up the fucking stairs. So whip this bat, and then you're going to jump up and ride these pendulums. And what you want to do is, as you're riding the pendulums, duck and keep whipping. That way, if bats do appear, you'll probably take them out. So make sure you do that. Drop down to this pendulum. You don't have to jump. Just drop straight down. And that's it. Now you're at the final boss. It's 3 forms. So this can be tricky. You definitely want to practice this with save states. The first 2 forms are super fucking easy with Syfa, but the 3rd form is tricky. So you'll see that now. So you really don't really need that many hearts to take out this boss, but I would recommend having at least 30. I went up to like 40 hearts because I just wanted to be safe. And it doesn't take long. You can farm them for a little while here. You can get it within a few rounds. You can get it up to like 40 very easily. So 40 should be enough. I think I had left over when I beat it. You're going to be using Syfa again, and you're not going to get any health replenishment here or any checkpoint, I don't believe. So now you want to get that fireball magic. You see I got the fireball magic? That's what we're going to use for the boss. Now stand on the 6th block. If you stand on the 6th block and just keep spamming your fire attack, you're going to do some, you're basically what you're doing is holding up and mashing the attack button. And you're going to get some staff strikes too. But if you spam it, you'll take out Dracula's first form super fast. Now you want to stay on the left side and throw fireballs at him. Don't get hit as you're going under like I did. It's easy not to get hit. Move to the right side and continue spamming your fireballs as it moves towards you very slowly. Now this is the hardest part. You're going to have to get on these platforms and try to get efficient with this and getting your shots in. You can actually get 3 shots in before you're in that upper position, but just keep firing them, and you're going to really have to learn how to dodge everything, and it's going to take a lot of practice as far as, you see I still got hit. But the lasers do kind of follow, I think, a specific pattern, but you just got to get used to them. And it's kind of fast for me to explain everything, but if you follow my pattern as far as how I rode the platforms and when I took my shots, you can duplicate that same pattern. So what you're really going to want to do is practice all 3 of those forms with save states. Each form, make a save state and practice it just to make sure you got it down. And that 3rd form did take me quite a bit of practice. I died on it a lot. But I was using save states to repeat that section again and again and again until I could do it several times in a row without dying. And then I was ready to take on the full stage. And I practiced the whole stage I did in sections like that. But the final boss took me quite a few practice attempts to get comfortable with it. But there's definitely pattern to it. But it's tough because you can get knocked in the holes and your jumps are locked into a specific trajectory each time. So, You just got to be ready for everything. And you can kind of lure the lasers to fire, I think, where you want them to fire by standing in a certain area. Though sometimes it does seem like the lasers would fire in a fixed position, but I think part of that was because I moved the same way each time. I was taking the same route on the platforms and firing at the same time, so I think that may have made the lasers follow the same patterns too, so that could have been part of it. I didn't have a complete understanding of it, but I was able to do it consistently after a lot of practice. So you just want to get used to getting those shots in and dodging the lasers. If you have any questions, let me know, and thanks for watching.